I sacrificed my comfort to secure my parents' future. They gave it all to my jobless brother and expect me to fix their mistake. I'm a 33-year-old female, and never thought I'd be the type of person writing a Reddit post about family drama, but here I am at 2 a.m., stress-eating leftover Chinese food, and trying to make sense of how my life turned into this absolute dumpster fire. Fair warning, this is going to be a long one, so buckle up because this story is wild from start to finish. First, let me paint you a picture of where I'm coming from. I'm a senior software engineer at a mid-sized tech company in Cleveland. Not one of those Silicon Valley giants, but decent enough that I can afford a nice condo and don't have to stress about buying name-brand cereals. I've always been the nerdy one in the family, you know, the kid who built her first computer at 13 and thought debugging code was more fun than going to high school parties. Not that I was totally antisocial or anything, I just had different priorities than most kids my age. Growing up, we were your typical middle-class Midwestern family. Dad worked his tail off in construction for over 30 years, coming home every day with a new story about some crazy thing that happened on the job site, his hands permanently calloused from decades of hard work. Mom taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school, the kind of teacher who'd spend her own money on classroom supplies and knew every student's birthday by heart. We lived in this modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, nothing fancy, but it was home. Then there's my brother, Jake, a 29-year-old male, the golden child extraordinaire. I swear, this kid could have set the house on fire, and my parents would have found a way to blame it on the matches being too flammable. From day one, it was like we were living in parallel universes, while I was expected to maintain straight A's, help with household chores, and basically act like a third parent. Jake got away with literally everything. Let me give you some examples, because I know this probably sounds like I'm exaggerating. I wish I was. When I was 16, I got my first job at the local library, shelving books. I had to save up for 6 months to buy my first laptop for coding projects. Meanwhile, Jake would casually mention wanting the latest Xbox. And bam, next thing you know, it's under the Christmas tree. When I needed new glasses, I had to wait 3 months until Dad's vision insurance kicked in. But when Jake decided he wanted contact lenses because glasses weren't cool, Mom dipped into their savings, no questions asked. The really frustrating part? Jake isn't a bad person, not really. He can actually be pretty charming when he wants to be. That classic life of the party type, who always knows the right joke to tell. But he's never had to face consequences for anything in his life, and that's turned him into this entitled man-child who thinks the world owes him everything on a silver platter. College was when the differences in how we were treated became impossible to ignore. I got accepted into State University's computer science program, not MIT or Stanford, but a solid program with good job placement rates. I was over the moon, right until my parents sat me down for the talk. Apparently, they couldn't help with tuition because they were saving for Jake's future. I took out loans, worked 2 part-time jobs, one at the campus IT help desk, and another doing freelance web design, and basically lived on instant noodles and coffee for 4 years. Meanwhile, Jake bounced around 3 different community colleges, never staying more than a semester at each one because he hadn't found his passion yet. Each time my parents paid his tuition in full, bought his books, and even gave him spending money for the full college experience. He finally dropped out completely after his 4th attempt, declaring that college isn't for everyone, and that he was going to make it big in sales. I know what you're probably thinking, why didn't I say anything? Trust me, I tried. Every time I brought up the obvious favoritism, I got shut down with phrases like, "You're just more independent," or "Jake needs extra support," or my personal favorite, "You're the older sister, you should understand." Eventually, I just stopped bringing it up. It was easier to focus on my own goals than bang my head against that particular wall. So there I was, fresh out of college, finally landing my first real programming job at a startup. 60-hour weeks, but hey, at least I had health insurance. Jake? Well, Jake was living his best life, bouncing between random sales jobs and still living in our parents' basement. But then everything changed when he met Sarah. Picture this, it's 2016, and I'm home for Dad's birthday dinner. Jake shows up 2 hours late, bursting through the door like he just discovered the cure for cancer. "Everyone, I met someone." Now, Jake had met someone approximately 47 times before, so I barely looked up from my mashed potatoes. But this time was different because in walks this woman wearing what I can only describe as Instagram model, goes to Walmart. Sarah, then a 23-year-old female, was, how do I put this diplomatically? Like that girl in high school who peaked at 16 and never quite got over it. She had this thing where she'd talk about her personal brand and her upcoming influencer career, while having maybe 500 followers on Instagram. But the way she carried herself, you'd think she was one step away from getting verified on every social platform known to mankind. The first words out of her mouth, and I swear on my collection of Star Wars Funko Pops, this is true, were, "OMG, your house is so cozy. It's like totally giving me vintage vibes." My mom's pride and joy, her carefully decorated living room that she'd spent years perfecting, just got called vintage, like it was some kind of thrift store find. Mom's face did this thing where she was trying to smile but looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon soaked in vinegar. But here's the real kicker. Within 3 months, yes, you read that right, Jake announces they're engaged. No ring, because apparently, they were saving up for something special. Translation, they were waiting for my parents to fund the whole thing. My mom, bless her heart, immediately started talking about dipping into their retirement fund for the perfect wedding. I tried to voice some concerns, crazy things like, maybe they should date for more than 90 days, and shouldn't they both have stable jobs first? But I got shut down faster than Internet Explorer. Sarah, meanwhile, had already created a wedding Pinterest board with over 3,000 pins, not exaggerating. She had specific requirements for everything, from the exact shade of rose gold for the table settings to the precise height of the centerpiece flowers. Remember, this is a woman who worked part-time at Sephora and lived with 3 roommates. But she was planning a wedding that would make the Kardashians say, maybe tone it down a bit. The worst part? Sarah started this passive-aggressive campaign against me almost immediately. She'd make these little comments at family dinners like, "It's so brave of you to focus on your career instead of finding love." Or, "Don't worry, some men actually like independent women," said in that sugary sweet tone that makes you want to commit crimes. One time, she actually patted my hand and said, "At least you'll always have your computers." The audacity of this woman could power a small city. My parents, naturally, thought she was delightful and just what Jake needed. They ate up her act like it was the last piece of chocolate cake on earth. When she'd make those backhanded comments about my single status or my career, they'd just laugh it off with, "Oh, that's just Sarah being Sarah," like being consistently rude was some sort of quirky personality trait. The engagement party was a preview of the nightmare to come. Sarah insisted on having it at this super expensive restaurant downtown, complete with a champagne fountain because apparently, regular champagne glasses weren't fancy enough. Jake, who was between jobs again, couldn't contribute a dime. Want to guess who ended up footing the bill? Yep, my parents took out a loan for an engagement party. I remember sitting there, watching Sarah hold court like some discount royalty, thinking, this cannot possibly get worse. Oh, sweet summer child, past me had no idea what was coming. The engagement party was just the appetizer in this 5-course meal of chaos. That night, my mom pulled me aside and asked if I'd consider being a bridesmaid. Before I could answer, Sarah swooped in and said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I wouldn't want to stress you out with all the dress fittings and parties. Plus, the bridesmaid dresses might not come in your size. I wear a size 8, the dresses came in up to size 24. But sure, Sarah, tell me more about how you're just looking out for me." Sarah transformed into the final boss of Bridezillas. She literally, and I mean literally, made a PowerPoint presentation for my parents about why they needed to spend at least $50,000 on her dream wedding. Her reasoning? Jake and I are going to be influencers, and these photos will launch our brand. I wish I was making this up. The venue she picked was this ridiculous historic mansion outside Cleveland that costs more per hour than I made in a week at my first programming job. When my mom gently suggested something more affordable, Sarah burst into tears and said, "But I've already announced it on Instagram. I can't disappoint my followers." Those mysterious followers must have been invisible because, last time I checked, her most popular post was a blurry photo of her Starbucks drink with 43 likes. Now here's where things get really wild. My parents, who had been telling me for years that they were carefully saving for retirement, suddenly revealed they had a special occasion fund. Plot twist, it was their actual retirement savings. They emptied their 401k, paid the early withdrawal penalties, and took out a second mortgage on their house, all for one single day. The dress saga deserves its own paragraph. Sarah didn't just buy a wedding dress, she bought 4. Yes, you read that right, one for the ceremony, one for the reception, one for the sunset photos, and one for the exit. Each dress cost more than my first car. When I pointed out that she'd only wear each dress for a few hours, she looked at me like I'd suggested she get married in a trash bag and said, "Well, some of us care about creating magical moments." This from someone who still had an outstanding balance on her Forever 21 credit card. The day of the wedding was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, while being forced to wear a hideous dress that Sarah definitely picked to make all the bridesmaids look bad. Oh yeah, she eventually made me a bridesmaid after my mom threw a fit. But I was stationed at the very end of the line, behind Sarah's second cousin's roommate's sister, who she'd met exactly once. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, but in the most expensive way possible. The luxury caterer served raw chicken, the DJ played the wrong first dance song, and the professional photographer, who turned out to be one of Sarah's Instagram mutuals trying to build her portfolio, somehow managed to blur almost every single photo. But Sarah's reaction to these disasters was what really took the cake. Instead of dealing with the problem, she had a full-on meltdown during the reception. I'm talking mascara running, fake tan streaking, full-on "this is the worst day of my life" screaming match with the wedding planner. Jake just stood there, looking lost, probably wondering if he could sneak out for a smoke and never come back. My parents spent the whole time running around trying to fix everything while I sat at my table, stress-eating wedding cake and wondering if anyone would notice if I ordered a pizza. The real gut punch came at the end of the night, when I overheard my dad talking to the venue manager about putting the final balance on his credit card, because the check they'd written bounced. My mom was in the bathroom crying because they'd just gotten a text that their mortgage payment had been declined. Meanwhile, Sarah was complaining that the lighting wasn't optimal for her Instagram stories. But here's the kicker, and this still makes my blood boil when I think about it. During the father-daughter dance, Sarah looked right at me and said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "It must be so hard for you to watch this, knowing you might never have a wedding of your own. But don't worry, you can live vicariously through my perfect day." I had to physically restrain myself from pushing her into the chocolate fountain. The next day, while everyone was dealing with their hangovers and regrets, Sarah announced she was taking a break from social media because the wedding photos weren't aesthetic enough for her feed. My parents were left with $78,000 in debt. Yes, you read that right. And Jake and Sarah had the audacity to complain that they didn't get enough gift cards to complete their home furnishing wish list. I tried to talk to my parents about their financial situation after the wedding, but they kept insisting everything was fine. "We'll figure it out," my mom said, while cutting coupons for the first time in her life. At least Jake is happy, but was he? Every time I saw him after the wedding, he looked like a man who just realized he'd signed up for a lifetime subscription to chaos with no refund policy. Little did I know, this wedding was just the warm-up act. The real show was about to begin, and let me tell you, it makes this $78,000 disaster look like a budget backyard barbecue. After the wedding disaster, I threw myself into my career like it was the last season of my favorite Netflix show. The startup I was working for got acquired by a bigger tech company, and suddenly, my stock options were worth actual money, instead of just hopes and dreams. I'm not talking buy a yacht money, but definitely maybe I can finally pay off these student loans money. The acquisition meant I got promoted to lead developer, which came with a pretty sweet salary bump. I finally moved out of my shoebox apartment. You know, the one where the bathroom door couldn't fully open because it hit the toilet, and bought a condo in a decent part of town. Nothing fancy, but it has in-unit laundry and a balcony big enough for some plants, which basically makes it a mansion by millennial standards. Meanwhile, Jake and Sarah's influencer empire was going about as well as you'd expect. Sarah had upgraded from posting blurry Starbucks photos to posting blurry photos of their dinners at Olive Garden, but her follower count was still hovering around 800, half of which were definitely bots. Jake kept jumping between sales jobs, always with the same pattern: start strong, make big promises about becoming top seller, then either quit or get fired within 3 months because the company didn't align with his values. Translation: they expected him to actually work. Here's where things get complicated. Remember how my parents drained their savings and took out loans for the wedding? Well, the bills started coming due. My dad's construction work was getting harder on his body. Over 30 years of heavy lifting will do that to you. He started having serious back problems, and their health insurance didn't cover most of the treatments he needed. Mom was still teaching, but her salary barely covered their regular expenses, let alone the mountain of debt they'd accumulated. One night, my mom called me in tears. Dad's back had gotten so bad he couldn't work anymore, and they were 3 months behind on their second mortgage. Without thinking twice, I set up automatic payments to help them cover their bills. I even created a separate retirement account for them, putting away about $2,000 each month. It wasn't easy. I had to cut back on my own expenses and say goodbye to my dreams of getting a Tesla. Stuck with my reliable but decidedly unsexy Hyundai. But they're my parents. What else could I do? Sarah's reaction to all this? She started making these snarky TikToks about toxic productivity, and how some people think money is more important than family time. This from the woman who once tried to start a GoFundMe to buy herself a Gucci bag because it would help her brand. The audacity of this woman could power a small country. Things got even more bizarre when Jake and Sarah announced they were expecting their first kid. Instead of, preparing financially for parenthood, they decided this was the perfect time to start a family lifestyle blog. They actually asked me to build them a website for free, because exposure is better than payment, and I'm just sitting at a computer all day anyway. When I suggested they use Squarespace instead, Sarah cried to my parents about how I never support their dreams. By the time their second kid came along, yes, they decided one wasn't enough. They were living in this sketchy apartment complex where the elevator had been temporarily out of order since Obama's first term. Sarah kept posting these weirdly filtered photos, trying to make it look like some kind of bohemian paradise, with captions like "living that authentic life," and "you don't need luxury to be rich in love." But behind the scenes, they were constantly asking my parents for money. The real kicker? Every time I achieved something, promotion, condo purchase, maxing out my 401k, they'd find a way to make it about them. When I got an award at work for leading a major project, Sarah posted this long Instagram rant about how career women are missing out on life's true purpose. When I bought my condo, Jake told our parents it wasn't fair that I had so much extra money while his kids had to share a room. I tried to help them too, in practical ways. I offered to teach Jake basic coding so he could maybe get into tech sales, better job security, I sent Sarah resources about actual social media marketing careers. I even offered to pay for financial planning sessions, but nothing stuck. They were too busy building their brand to actually build their future. Then came the ask. It started with a phone call at 3 a.m. You know those calls that make your stomach drop before you even answer? Yeah, it was one of those. I fumbled for my phone, thinking it must be an emergency, only to hear Sarah's overly excited voice. OMG, you'll never believe it. We're pregnant again with number 3. Isn't that amazeballs? I mumbled some congratulations while mentally calculating how many more times they'd ask my parents for emergency money with another kid in the mix. But Sarah wasn't done. She launched into this whole speech about how they'd been manifesting their dream home, her actual words, and had found this perfect house in Maple Heights, the fancy part of town where houses start at $500,000. So here's the thing, she chirped, like she was about to ask to borrow a sweater instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars. We need you to buy it for us. Mom and Dad think it's a great idea. I literally had to put the phone on mute for a second to laugh hysterically into my pillow. When I got my composure back, I tried to let her down gently. Sarah, I can't afford to buy you guys a house. I'm already helping Mom and Dad with their bills. Her response? But you make so much money just playing with computers all day, and we need this house. Our apartment isn't safe for the kids anymore. Did you know our neighbor has a motorcycle? A motorcycle? What kind of environment is that for children? The next day, my parents invited me over for dinner. I should have known something was up when Mom made my favorite lasagna. She only breaks out the fancy recipe when she's about to drop a bomb. Sure enough, halfway through dinner, they started their tag team guilt trip about the house. Honey, Mom started, pushing the garlic bread toward me like carbs could soften the blow. We know you're good with money, and Jake and Sarah really need this. The kids deserve a better neighborhood. Dad jumped in. When I was your age, family helped family. Your Uncle Bob helped me buy our first house. Fact check. Uncle Bob loaned them $5,000 in 1985. Not exactly the same as buying a $500,000 house in 2022. I tried explaining that I couldn't afford it, that I had my own future to think about, my own potential family someday. But they weren't listening. They'd already decided I was being selfish. The dinner ended with me leaving early, my mom crying, and my dad giving me that disappointed look he usually reserved for when Jake lost another job. But here's where it gets really wild. A month later, I was doing my monthly budget check. Yes, I'm that person. I have spreadsheets for my spreadsheets. I logged into the retirement account I'd set up for my parents, the one I'd been faithfully putting $2,000 into every month for years. Balance, $0. I literally spit out my coffee, called my bank thinking there must be some mistake. Nope, the money was gone. All $175,000 of it. Years of careful saving vanished. I called my mom in a panic thinking they'd been scammed. She gave me this whole song and dance about lending it to my aunt for medical bills. But something felt off. Called my aunt, surprise, she had no idea what I was talking about. Finally confronted my parents in person. Mom broke down crying, she does that a lot, have you noticed? And admitted they'd given the money to Jake and Sarah for a down payment on their dream house. Let me repeat that. They took the money I had saved for their retirement and gave it to my brother for a house he couldn't afford. I lost it. Like completely lost it. Are you out of your minds? I screamed. That was your retirement money. What are you going to live on? Social Security? Dad's back is getting worse, your medical bills are increasing, and you just gave away your safety net. Their response? Dad actually had the audacity to say, well, we had to do this because you refused to help. You can abandon your brother, but we can't turn away from our son. I felt like I was in the twilight zone. These people had watched me scrimp and save for years to build them a retirement fund. They'd seen me drive an old car, live in a modest condo, skip vacations, all so they'd be secure in their old age. And they just gave it away to Jake and Sarah, who had never shown an ounce of financial responsibility in their lives. Mom tried to calm me down, saying they had no choice because Jake and Sarah needed the house for the children. She even tried to guilt me by saying, "You're single. You don't understand what it's like to have kids." I stormed out, but not before delivering my ultimatum. Either they get the money back, or I'm done. No more monthly support, no more paying their bills, no more bailing them out. They chose Jake over me one too many times. You know that feeling when you're watching a horror movie, and you're screaming at the characters not to go into the dark basement, but they do it anyway? That's basically how I felt watching the next few months unfold after I cut off financial support to my parents. Sarah posted this long Instagram rant about how some people think money is more important than family, and how they would step up and take care of the family, since others had abandoned their responsibilities. The post got 34 likes, including one from her mom and 3 from her alternate accounts. At first, they actually seemed to be making it work, or at least, that's what it looked like on social media. Sarah was posting daily updates about their blessed life in their new house, complete with perfectly staged photos of their morning routine, which apparently involved drinking coffee on their fancy new front porch while wearing matching pajamas. She even started a YouTube channel called Living Our Best Life with the Williamsons, which peaked at 127 subscribers. But you can only filter reality so much before it starts showing through the cracks. The first sign of trouble came when Jake lost his latest sales job. Something about restructuring, but knowing Jake, it was probably because he spent more time helping Sarah film TikToks than actually selling anything. Sarah tried to spin this as a blessing in disguise because now Jake could be her full-time content manager. I'm not making this up. She literally expected them to live off her non-existent influencer income while raising 3 kids and paying a mortgage. My parents, meanwhile, were trying to put on a brave face, but I could see them struggling. Mom started selling her beloved antique collection piece by piece on Facebook Marketplace. Dad's back got worse, but they couldn't afford his physical therapy anymore. They kept insisting everything was fine, that Jake and Sarah were helping out, but their utilities got shut off twice in 1 month. I found this out from our neighbor Mrs. Peterson, who let them run an extension cord to her house so their food wouldn't spoil. Yeah, it was that bad. About 4 months in, the wheels really started coming off. Sarah's Instagram stories switched from morning routine posts to long teary rants about haters and negative energy after people started calling out her obviously fake lifestyle. Their perfect new house started looking less perfect. The lawn wasn't being mowed, Amazon packages stopped showing up daily, and their fancy SUV disappeared from the driveway. Later found out it got repossessed. Then came the credit card debt revelation. Turns out they'd been maxing out cards left and right, trying to maintain their influencer lifestyle. We're talking multiple cards, all maxed out. Sarah had apparently convinced Jake that they needed to invest in their brand by buying things like a $2,000 camera, ring lights, a podcast microphone setup. They recorded exactly 2 episodes of a podcast called Manifesting Your Best Life Before Giving Up, and countless props for their social media posts. The breaking point came when my parents finally grew a spine and demanded Jake and Sarah start paying them the monthly allowance they'd promised. Sarah actually laughed in their face and said, "We're investing in our future right now. Once we hit 10,000 followers, we'll be making enough to support everyone." This from a woman who couldn't even get 50 likes on a post, unless she bought them. I got a call from Mom at 2 a.m. one night. She was crying, shocking, I know, because their electricity had been shut off again, and this time Mrs. Peterson was out of town, so they couldn't even run an extension cord. Dad's medication needed to be refrigerated. I'll admit, I almost broke and helped them, but then Mom said something that turned my heart to stone. If you had just bought Jake and Sarah the house in the first place, none of this would have happened. That's when I realized nothing had changed. They were still blaming me for their problems, still enabling Jake and Sarah's delusions, still refusing to accept reality. So, I stayed strong and suggested they ask their precious son for help instead. Want to know what Jake and Sarah's response was when my parents went to them, desperate for help? Sarah literally filmed their interaction for her Instagram stories, painting herself as the victim of toxic family members who only want handouts. She ended the video with a promo code for some sketchy weight loss tea. The video got 89 views. But it all hit rock bottom one Tuesday morning. Mrs. Peterson, actual saint of a neighbor, called me in a panic. She'd gone to check on my parents and noticed a moving truck at Jake and Sarah's house at 4 a.m. Not the normal kind of moving truck either. We're talking one of those sketchy rental vans that definitely had seen better days. When my parents went over to investigate later that morning, the house was completely empty. Like, not just moved out empty. We're talking took every single light bulb and cabinet handle empty. Sarah's precious ring light setup? Gone. The kids' toys? Gone. Even the fancy doorbell camera they'd insisted was essential for their home security content series had been ripped off the wall. But here's the real kicker. They didn't just disappear with their own stuff. They somehow managed to get their hands on my parents' emergency credit card, the one Mom kept just in case, and maxed it out with a $5,000 cash advance the day before they left. Mom had given them the card to buy groceries when they were struggling last month. I guess, in their minds, disappearing in the middle of the night counts as an emergency. The realtor who showed up the next day dropped the next bomb. Jake and Sarah had listed the house for sale 3 weeks earlier. They'd already accepted an offer and were just waiting for closing. They'd managed to keep this secret from everyone. Probably because they'd blocked the entire family on social media after their last big fight with my parents about money. Want to guess what they did with the sale money? Because it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. They not only pocketed the down payment my parents had given them, my retirement savings, but they also somehow convinced the buyers to pay in cash and wire the money directly to their account instead of going through the proper channels. The real estate agent was furious, apparently. They'd spun some story about needing the money quickly for a family medical emergency. She only found out about the sketchy deal when she showed up to do the final walkthrough and found the house abandoned. The buyers are now threatening to sue everyone involved, which is just the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday. My parents were devastated, obviously, not just because their golden child had screwed them over again, but because they'd lost access to their grandkids too. Sarah's last Instagram post before deleting her account was a long rant about how they were leaving toxic energy behind and starting fresh where their dreams could flourish. She tagged it as being in Miami, but knowing Sarah, that's probably just another lie. Here's where it gets really sad though. My parents finally hit rock bottom. Dad's back got so bad he couldn't even get out of bed some days, and their health insurance lapsed because they couldn't afford the premiums. Mom had to pick up extra tutoring jobs after school just to keep the lights on. They were surviving on ramen noodles and whatever Mrs. Peterson accidentally made too much of for dinner. Then came the day I'd been both dreading and expecting. Mom showed up at my condo, looking about 10 years older than the last time I'd seen her. She broke down completely. Not the manipulative crying I'd gotten used to, but real, raw, broken sobs. For the first time, she actually apologized. Not just a quick sorry, but a real acknowledgement of how badly they'd screwed up by enabling Jake his whole life and taking my support for granted. Dad was harder to crack, but even he finally admitted they'd been wrong. The final straw for him was finding out Jake had stolen his prized fishing gear, the last thing he had from his own father, and probably sold it for cash before they disappeared. So here's where we are now. I've started helping my parents again, but with very clear boundaries this time. They've agreed to financial counseling. It's a condition of my help, and they're finally starting to understand how their enabling behavior contributed to this whole mess. I'm not paying all their bills like before, but I am making sure they have food and can afford their medications. As for Jake and Sarah, they've completely vanished, changed their numbers, deleted all social media, though Sarah did try to start a new Instagram account under a different name. I found it because she still used the same old hashtags like #Jobless and #LivingMyBestLife. The police said that since my parents willingly gave the money, there's not much they can do. The only update we got was a postcard, no return address, with a picture of palm trees and the message, "Kids are doing great. Living our dream. Don't try to contact us, we're done with the negative energy. P.S. Sorry about the credit card, we needed it for gas money." The postmark said Orlando, but who knows if that's really where they are. Mom asked me the other day if I think Jake will ever come back. I told her the truth, probably only when he needs money again. But this time, I know we'll all be strong enough to say no. Edit to everyone asking, yes, I changed all my banking passwords and put a freeze on my credit. Trust issues? Me? Whatever gave you that idea? Edit 2. A lot of people are asking about Mrs. Peterson. She's still an absolute angel and has basically adopted my parents. She brings them dinner twice a week and has a standing movie night with my mom. Sometimes, the best family is the one you choose. Final update, just found out Sarah started a TikTok account, trying to sell some sketchy crypto scheme. Guess some people never change. Shrug.
I shut down my wedding after my fiancée turned it into a humiliation game. Then I exposed her bets and cheating ex while she begged me back. I, 28, male, was supposed to marry my fiancée Amy, 27, female last week, and honestly, I'm still trying to process everything that happened. We'd been together for 4 years, and I seriously thought she was my soulmate. I met Amy at my friend's barbecue party. She was this super outgoing girl who could light up any room she walked into. Not going to lie, she was way out of my league, smart, gorgeous, and could make anyone laugh. Our first date was actually hilarious. I took her to this fancy restaurant, trying to impress her, but they messed up our reservation. Instead of getting mad, she suggested we go get hot dogs from the street vendor and eat them in the park. That's when I knew she was different. The first 3 years were amazing. Like the kind of relationship you see in those cheesy posts on relationships where everyone calls it fake because it's too perfect. She was always there for me when things got rough. When I lost my grandpa last year, Amy took care of everything, called my boss to get me time off, made sure I ate, even organized all the family stuff so I could just focus on grieving. She'd leave little notes in my lunch when I had big meetings at work. Once, she even learned how to make my mom's lasagna recipe because she knew I missed home-cooked food. Amy was also super fun to be around. We'd have these random adventure days where we'd just drive somewhere without planning anything. She taught me to stop being so serious all the time, to enjoy life more. My friends loved her because she always made our game nights more fun. My sister never said anything, but I didn't really see her get along with Amy. That wasn't an issue, though. But things started changing about 6 months ago. It was small stuff at first. She started bringing up her ex, Tom, more and more, like we'd be watching TV and she'd randomly say, "Oh, Tom loved this show," or "Tom could never understand shows like this, he was so basic." At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone talks about their exes sometimes, right? And her pranks started getting worse. Amy always liked jokes and pranks, but they used to be fun ones we'd both laugh at. Like this one time she replaced all my socks with bright pink ones before an important meeting. It was funny because she knew I had shoes where no one would see them anyway. But lately her pranks started feeling different, mean almost. When I got this huge promotion I'd been working toward for 2 years, instead of being excited like she used to be about my wins, she gave this weird speech at my celebration. She stood right there in front of my co-workers, my boss and my parents, talking about how I probably just got lucky and my boss felt sorry for me. Everyone was just standing there awkwardly while she laughed. The old Amy would have never done that. She used to be my biggest cheerleader. The proposal is when I really started noticing something was off. I'd spent months planning it, saved up for this super fancy restaurant, got her favorite flowers, even had the restaurant help set up this special dessert thing with the ring. When I got down on one knee, she pretended she didn't want to marry me for 5 whole minutes. Just sat there going, "Oh, I don't know," while everyone in the restaurant stared at us. When she finally said yes and laughed, saying it was just a joke, something felt wrong. The old Amy would have maybe played along for a few seconds, but she would never have let me sit there feeling stupid for that long. It's weird looking back now. The same things I used to love about her. Her spontaneity, her sense of humor, her outgoing personality started feeling different. Like she wasn't doing things to make us both happy anymore, but just to get attention or laughs from other people. Every time I tried talking to her about how her pranks were making me feel lately, she'd just say, "OMG, babe, learn to take a joke," or "Why are you so sensitive?" The old Amy would have listened. We used to be able to talk about anything. My best friend started noticing the change too. He'd say stuff like, "Dude, is Amy okay? She's acting different," but I kept making excuses because I remembered how great things used to be. Kept telling myself maybe she was just stressed about the wedding or work or something. The Amy I fell in love with was this amazing, caring person who made me want to be better. She'd surprise me with my favorite snacks when I was having a bad day, remember random stuff I mentioned months ago, and always knew how to make me laugh when I was down. That's why it took me so long to notice when things started changing. When you love someone that much, you don't want to see the bad stuff. But man, the changes kept coming. Looking back now, I can see all these red flags popping up one after another. It's like watching a replay of a game where you already know the ending. All the signs are so obvious now, but when you're in the middle of it, you just keep hoping things will go back to normal. Anyway, about 2 months before the wedding, things got really weird. Like the kind of weird where you know something's wrong but can't put your finger on it. Amy started talking about her ex, I'll call him Tom, way more than usual. She'd always bring him up in these backhanded compliment kind of ways. Like, we'd be at dinner and I'd be telling her about this new project at work, and she'd go, "This is why you're so much better than Tom. He could barely handle basic math, and here you are managing $1-million projects." Or we'd be grocery shopping and I'd be checking the nutrition labels, trying to eat healthy and all that, and she'd be like, "Tom never cared about this stuff. He'd just grab whatever was cheapest. He was so simple." At first, I thought maybe she was just trying to make me feel good or whatever, but it kept happening more and more. We'd be watching a documentary about space or something and she'd say, "Tom would never watch stuff like this. It was too complicated for him. He just watched sports all day." But the way she said it was weird, like she missed how simple he was. Then I started noticing she was always on her phone. Like always, during dinner, while watching TV, even when we were trying to plan wedding stuff. She'd get these texts and turn her phone away real quick if I walked by. I'm not usually the jealous type, but something felt off. One night, she fell asleep on the couch while watching a movie and her phone lit up. It was just for a second, but that was all it took, Tom. My stomach dropped. The message preview flashed across the screen, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," before disappearing. My brain latched onto every detail, the way his name sat so casually on her screen. How could she still have his number while we were engaged? The emoji. Small and harmless, but suddenly full of meaning I didn't want to unpack. I tried to breathe, to tell myself it could be innocent. Maybe she was just meeting an old friend. Maybe it was about the wedding. But my gut twisted, telling me what my brain refused to accept. After that, I started paying more attention, where she went, how long she was gone, the little inconsistencies in her stories. She kept saying she had all these wedding planning meetings with her bridesmaids, but something wasn't adding up. So one day, I decided to follow her. I felt ridiculous doing it, like some paranoid boyfriend in a bad movie. But I needed to know, needed to see for myself. She pulled into a coffee shop downtown, parked and walked inside. No bridesmaids, no wedding planners, just him. Tom was already there, waiting for her at a table near the window. I stayed outside, standing by a lamppost like some shadow in the night. My heart pounded in my ears as I watched them. They weren't just talking. They weren't just catching up. They looked comfortable, familiar, like two people with history, like two people who'd been doing this for a while. She laughed at something he said, tilting her head in that way she always did when she was flirting, twisting a strand of hair around her finger, flashing that easy, intimate smile that used to be reserved for me. I felt sick. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to burst through the door, call her out right there in front of everyone, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just stood there watching through the window like some idiot who didn't see this coming. Like a fool who thought he was marrying the love of his life when, in reality, she was already slipping away. I didn't confront her when she came back. Maybe I should have, but I wanted to see how far this would go. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more stuff. She'd say she was going dress shopping with her mom, but her mom would call me asking about wedding details during that exact time. She'd claim she had late meetings at work, but her coworker, who I'm friends with, mentioned she'd left early that day. Her bridesmaids were acting weird too. They'd give me these looks whenever wedding stuff came up, like they knew something I didn't. They'd be whispering and then shut up real quick when I walked by. All except one of her friends. I'll call her Jen. She's this quiet bridesmaid who works at my company. She always seemed uncomfortable when the other bridesmaids were giggling about something. I remember this one time we were at the wedding venue doing some planning and Amy was going on about how Tom could never afford a place like this, how he still lived in his college apartment with roommates. But she had this weird tone, almost like she thought it was cute. Then she looked at me and said, "That's why you're so much better, babe. You've got actual ambition." Tom was just simple, but the way she said simple, it was like she was remembering something nice. Jen pulled me aside that day, looking really nervous. She started saying something like, "Look, there's something you should..." But Amy came back right then and Jen just walked away real quick. The final straw was when I overheard Amy on the phone in our backyard. She thought I was at work, but I'd come home early with a headache. She was laughing about something and said, "Yeah, he has no idea. He thinks I'm at wedding planning meetings." Then she saw me through the window and hung up super fast, tried to play it off like she was talking to her sister about a surprise for me. I knew right then our relationship was over, even before I knew exactly what was going on with her and Tom, before I found out about her stupid prank plans, before any of the wedding day stuff. I knew we were done. The trust was just gone. But here's the thing. I didn't say anything. Call me petty, but I wanted to see what she was planning. All these secret meetings, all these weird comments about Tom, all these giggly bridesmaids, something was coming. And with the way Amy loved her pranks, I had a feeling it was going to be something big. I just didn't expect it to be what it was. Looking back, maybe I should have just confronted her. Maybe I should have called off the wedding right then. But honestly, I'm glad I didn't. So there I was, about 3 weeks before the wedding, sitting in my car outside that coffee shop where Amy was meeting Tom again. And I just knew I needed to do something. I'm not usually the type to plan ahead. Honestly, Amy was always the planner in our relationship, but something in my gut was screaming that I needed backup. I called my buddy Mike. Now, Mike's this corporate lawyer who's always telling these crazy stories about divorce cases he's worked on. We went to college together, and he's seen Amy's pranks firsthand, like this one time at his birthday party where she pretended to be a singing telegram person and embarrassed him in front of his whole law firm. He never really liked her after that. So I called him while watching Amy laugh at whatever Tom was saying. Dude, I need help. I think Amy's planning something for the wedding, and it's not going to be good. Mike was quiet for a minute, then goes, come to my office now. I'll never forget sitting in his fancy office while he just listened to everything. When I finished, he looked at me real serious and said, we need insurance. And then pulled out this legal pad and started writing. Look, he said, I can't stop her from whatever she's planning, but we can make sure she regrets it if she tries anything. We spent like 4 hours in his office drafting this completely fake prenup. Mike said it wouldn't hold up in court for even 5 minutes, but it looked super official, had all these fancy legal words that I didn't even understand. The important part was this specific clause about public humiliation. I still have a photo of it on my phone. If either party engages in deliberate public embarrassment or humiliation of the other party before the signing of this contract, all jointly planned financial obligations will be immediately nullified, and the offending party must issue a public apology. Mike even put in all these detailed definitions of what counts as public humiliation and financial obligation, added some fake case law references too, made it look like one of those 50-page contracts nobody ever reads. The best part, he put this official-looking stamp on it and had his secretary notarize it just to make it look more legit. Amy always just signed whatever was put in front of her. She even admitted once she never read her own apartment lease. Mike said she'd never know it was fake. I kept the prenup in this black folder and gave it to my best man, Dan, to hold on to. Told him to keep it with him during the wedding, just in case. Dan thought I was being paranoid, but he's known me since we were kids and could tell how worried I was. The whole time we were doing this, I felt kind of guilty. Like maybe I was going too far, maybe I was just being paranoid. But then I'd remember how Amy was still meeting Tom behind my back, still lying about where she was going, still acting weird with her bridesmaids, and I didn't plan to use it unless something popped up during the wedding. Jen, the bridesmaid from my work, actually came to my office one day looking super nervous. She started saying something about how she couldn't keep quiet anymore, but then Amy called her phone right at that moment. The look on Jen's face when she saw Amy's name pop up, I knew whatever was coming was bad. I also started noticing more stuff at home. Amy was having these long phone calls in the bathroom with the shower running. She'd close her laptop super fast when I walked into the room. One time I saw her deleting text messages when she thought I was sleeping. The weird thing was, she was also being extra nice sometimes, like randomly bringing home my favorite takeout or suggesting we watch my favorite movies. Looking back, I think she was feeling guilty, or maybe she was just trying to throw me off. I don't know. I remember the night before the wedding, sitting in my parents' house. Amy insisted we do the whole not seeing each other before the wedding thing, looking at that black folder with the prenup. Part of me hoped I'd never need it, like maybe I was wrong about everything. Maybe Amy really was just planning some silly surprise. My mom came in and saw me staring at the folder. She didn't know what was in it, but she could tell something was wrong. She sat down next to me and said, "You know, you don't have to go through with this if you're not sure. I just told her everything was fine." I put the folder in Dan's bag that night, told him to keep it close during the ceremony. He made this joke about how it was like in the movies where someone always objects at the wedding, but neither of us was laughing. The whole time I was getting ready the next morning, I kept thinking about that folder, hoping I wouldn't need it, but also feeling weirdly calm knowing it was there just in case. The morning of the wedding was actually perfect, like weirdly perfect. Everything at the venue looked amazing. All the decorations were exactly how Amy wanted them. The whole time I was getting ready with my groomsmen, I kept thinking maybe I was wrong about everything. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Dan, my best man, kept checking on the folder like it was his job. He'd pat his bag every few minutes, making sure it was still there. My other groomsmen thought he was checking for the rings and kept making fun of him for being so nervous. My mom was already crying before the ceremony even started. Happy tears, she thought. My dad kept straightening my tie even though it was fine. Looking back now, I think they both knew something was off but didn't want to say anything. I remember standing at the altar watching everyone take their seats. Amy's bridesmaids were all giggling and whispering to each other, all except Jen, who looked like she was about to throw up. She wouldn't even look at me. Then the music started playing and everyone stood up. Amy walked in with her dad, and honestly, she looked beautiful, like actually perfect, which just made everything that happened next so much worse. The ceremony started normal. The priest was doing his thing, talking about love and commitment and all that. I was actually starting to feel stupid about having that prenup in Dan's bag. We got to the vows. Right before we were supposed to say our vows, Amy did this thing where she grabbed the mic from the priest. He looked super confused, but she just gave him this big smile like, "Don't worry about it." Then she says, all excited like she's hosting a game show or something, "I have a little surprise for my wonderful soon-to-be husband." My stomach just dropped. Dan immediately put his hand on his bag where the folder was. I saw my dad sit up straighter in his seat. Amy turns to face all our guests with this huge smile and goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to the real love of my life." The doors at the back of the venue open, and in walks the gentleman Tom, like he was in some kind of movie or something, just strolling down the aisle with this stupid grin on his face while everyone's turning around in their seats trying to figure out what's happening. My mom gasped so loud you could hear it across the room. My sister actually stood up like she was ready to fight someone. One of my aunts just said, "Oh no," really loud. But Amy wasn't done. She's standing there beaming like she just won an award or something and starts going on about how she just couldn't say "I do" without making sure Tom approved first, because he was such a big part of her life, and they'd been talking a lot lately. Then this idiot Tom actually walks up to the altar and claps me on the back like we're friends or something. He's got this smirk on his face that I just wanted to punch off. Most of the bridesmaids are giggling like this is the funniest thing they've ever seen. The priest looks like he wants to disappear. Jen's actually crying now, like full-on tears running down her face, but Amy wasn't done. Not even close. She pulls out her phone and goes, "Oh, and I have something else to show everyone." She started scrolling through this group chat with her bridesmaids. "Look, babe," she says, showing me her screen. "We've had this little pool going. The girls and I have been taking bets." I'm looking at these messages, and I swear my brain just stopped working for a second. These girls who were supposed to be helping Amy plan our wedding had been betting actual money on whether she'd go through with it. One of her bridesmaids had bet $200 that Amy would fake cold feet right before the ceremony. The other had $150 on me crying at the altar. Lisa had bet $300 that Amy would pull something epic. Her exact words. They had this whole spreadsheet going with odds and everything, like they were betting on a football game instead of someone's wedding, someone's life. The worst part, there were messages from months ago. This wasn't some last-minute joke. They'd been planning this for months. All those wedding planning meetings, they were probably sitting around planning how to humiliate me. Amy scrolling through the chat, laughing and pointing out different bets. "Oh look, Rachel almost got it right. She said I'd bring a surprise guest. That's close enough to count, right?" Tom's still there, looking at the phone over Amy's shoulder and laughing like this is the funniest thing he's ever seen. "Man," he says, "you really went all out for this one." I look around the room. Some of the guests start whispering. I can see phones coming out because, of course, people are recording this. This is probably going to end up on social media in like 5 minutes. And Amy, she's just standing there in her perfect white dress, waiting for me to laugh. Like this is just another one of her pranks that I'm supposed to brush off. Like she didn't just destroy our entire relationship in front of everyone we know. "Come on, babe," she says, poking me in the side. "You're not mad, right? It's just a joke. Tom's not really going to object or anything, unless..." She looks at Tom and they both start laughing again. I glance at Dan, and he's already got the folder halfway out of his bag. But Amy's still not done. She turns to the guests and goes, "Oh, should I tell them about the backup plan? You know, in case he actually got mad?" That's when I knew this wasn't just a prank gone wrong. This wasn't just Amy being Amy. This was straight up cruel. She'd spent months planning how to humiliate me in front of everyone I care about. She'd involved her friends, her ex, probably half the people in this room. I looked at her standing there, looking so proud of herself, and I didn't see the girl I fell in love with anymore. I saw someone who thought my feelings were a joke, someone who'd rather get laughs than have love, and that's when I decided if she wanted a show, I'd give her a show. I smiled at her, the calmest smile I've ever smiled in my life. She actually smiled back, probably thinking I was finally getting into the joke. I turned to the priest, who honestly looks like he wants to resign from the church right there. "Hey," I say super politely, "do we have that table set up for signing the marriage license? I need to grab something real quick." The priest just points to this little table off to the side, probably thinking I'm about to make this whole thing even worse. I walk over to Dan. The room is dead silent now, like everyone's holding their breath. Amy still got this huge smile on her face, but I can see she's getting confused. This wasn't part of her script. I pull out the black folder, the one Mike helped me prepare. It looks super official. I hold it up so everyone can see it. Ladies and gentlemen, I say, using my best meeting presentation voice. Before we go any further, I'd like to share a document with my dear fiancé. Amy tilts her head like a confused puppy. Wait, what? I start walking back to the altar, taking my sweet time. My hands aren't even shaking, I'm just ready. See, Amy, I say, real calm, like I'm explaining something to a kid. I had my lawyer draft up a little agreement before the wedding, just a small precaution, you know, just in case you ever decided to do something like this. I hold up the contract so everyone can see the official-looking stamp at the bottom. The one Mike's secretary put there. Amy's face starts losing color. What the hell is that? She asks. Her smile's finally starting to crack. Oh, just a little clause, I say, pretending to flip through the pages. See this part right here? It states that if either party engages in public humiliation before signing the marriage license, then all joint financial obligations, like the wedding, honeymoon, and shared assets, are immediately null and void. The guests gasp, like an actual group gasp, like in movies when someone reveals the killer. Amy's blinking real fast now, like she's trying to wake up from a bad dream. Wait, what? That's not real. That can't be real. Oh, it's very real, I say, channeling my inner lawyer. It also requires the guilty party to issue a public apology, right here, in front of all our guests. Tom finally stops smirking. Dude, you can't be serious. This is a joke, right? I turn to look at him and give him the biggest smile. Oh, I take pranks very seriously. Don't you, Tom? Since you helped plan this one and all. Amy's starting to sweat now. Her perfect makeup's getting a little messy. Babe, this is crazy. You're not actually mad, are you? That's when I delivered the line I'd been practicing in my head since I saw her with Tom at that coffee shop. Why would I be mad, Amy? This is hilarious. It's all part of the fun, right? I snapped the folder shut real loud. I'm canceling the entire wedding. Dead silence. Like you could hear a pin drop from across the room. Amy's perfect smile just shatters. Wait, what? Oh, don't look so shocked, I say, tucking the folder under my arm. You had your joke. Now it's my turn. Wedding's off. The room explodes, like actually explodes, with whispers and gasps. The priest backs away from us like we're both crazy. The bridesmaids finally stop giggling. Amy's face goes from pale white to bright red in like 2 seconds. You're joking, she says, but her voice is shaking now. Am the first? I look at Dan. Hey man, would you do the honors? Dan, absolute legend that he is, pulls out his phone, hits play, and hit the road. Jack starts blasting through the venue speakers. Some guests actually start laughing, others just sit there in shock. A few get up and start leaving. Smart move, honestly. Amy looks like she's about to pass out. You're not serious, she keeps saying. You're not walking away. I just grin. I literally am. I turn to my parents. Mom's actually smiling now through her tears, and Dad looks proud for the first time all day. I think we're done here. My dad immediately stands up and starts telling guests the wedding is over, always the practical one. Then I turn back to Tom, who's trying to slowly back away from the altar. Hey Tom, I call out. You like stealing people's fiancés, right? Well, congrats, she's all yours. That finally wipes the smirk off his face. Amy spins around to look at him. Tom, tell him this is stupid. But Tom's already heading for the door. I think I'm gonna head out, actually. The bridesmaids are all looking at their feet now. Some guests are straight up laughing. And Amy looks like her whole world just collapsed. You can't just leave me like this, she screams. I stop at the end of the aisle and turn around one last time. Amy, you love attention so much? Well, congratulations, you're getting it. And with that, I walked out of my own wedding. The next 24 hours were crazy. My phone basically exploded with messages and missed calls from Amy. Like, we're talking hundreds of messages. At first, she acted all confused, like she couldn't understand why I left. Kept saying stuff like, it was just a joke, and why are you being so dramatic? Then she got mad, started sending these long messages about how I humiliated her, ironic, right, and how she couldn't believe I would ruin our wedding over a silly prank. She even tried saying I had no right to walk out on her like that. But here's where it gets good. Remember that group chat where they were placing bets? Dan, being the absolute genius he is, had taken screenshots of everything before we left, from one of the bridesmaids. All their messages about planning this prank, all the bets they placed. even messages from months ago where they were discussing different ways to mess with me at the wedding. Amy tried telling people I abandoned her at the altar, started playing victim on social media and everything. But then those screenshots started making the rounds. Turns out people don't really like it when you turn someone's wedding into a betting game. The fallout was epic. Those bridesmaids who thought it was so funny started panicking when they realized people could see their messages. Sarah, the maid of honor, actually lost a job opportunity because the screenshots got sent to her potential employer. Guess they didn't want someone who thought humiliating people was funny. Amy's parents called me the next day. Her mom was crying, saying she had no idea Amy would do something like this. Turns out they'd warned her not to pull any stunts at the wedding. Her dad actually apologized to me and said he understood why I did what I did. Then the money stuff hit. Amy started demanding I pay her back for wedding costs. That made me laugh because I'd paid for almost everything. The venue, my card, the catering, my account, that fancy honeymoon she'd been bragging about to everyone, all booked under my name. One phone call to each place and it was all canceled. The venue manager was actually super understanding. Said he'd seen some crazy wedding stuff, but this was a new one. The honeymoon cancellation hit her hard. She'd already posted all over social media about our amazing 2 weeks in Hawaii, had to explain to everyone why she wasn't posting beach pictures. Her bridesmaids started distancing themselves real quick. Funny how fast people disappear when they realize they're going down with you. Even the ones who were in on the whole thing suddenly didn't want anything to do with her. Tom ghosted her completely, wouldn't answer her calls or texts. Guess he didn't find it so funny anymore when people started asking him why he thought ruining someone's wedding was okay. Her friend, Jen, finally told me everything, and man, I could see the guilt weighing on her. She wasn't like the others. She never laughed at Amy's pranks, never joined in on the group chats, never once thought humiliating someone was funny. She admitted she'd known about the plan for weeks, but felt trapped, torn between speaking up and risking Amy turning on her. She told me how she'd tried to warn Amy, begged her to call it off, but Amy just brushed her off, saying it would be hilarious to see my reaction. Tom, of course, had no problem playing along, probably thought it made him look cool or something. But Jen, she hated every second of it. She told me she barely slept the night before the wedding, sick with anxiety knowing what was coming. And when she saw me standing at the altar, oblivious to the setup, she said she wanted to scream, to stop it before it happened, but she froze. As she talked, her voice was quiet, full of regret, like she thought I'd hate her for not doing more. But for the first time in months, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time, actual common sense. Someone who didn't just go along with the crowd, someone who cared about how people felt. And honestly, that stuck with me more than the whole wedding disaster ever did. A week after everything, Amy showed up at my apartment looking like she hadn't slept in days, still wearing her engagement ring. Started crying about how sorry she was, how she never meant for things to go this far, how she still loved me and we could fix this. I just handed her an envelope. Inside was an invitation to a fake wedding rehearsal. Same venue, same time as our wedding was supposed to be. The guest list, everyone who saw her little prank. No groom's name. Just a note saying, "Now we're even." She stood there reading it like 5 times before she got it. When she looked up, I just shut the door in her face. Remember all those phones recording at the wedding? Yeah. Clips started showing up online. People started calling her the bride who got left as a joke. Her own prank turned into a meme. Some of Amy's friends tried defending her online, saying I should have taken the joke better. But then more screenshots would appear, showing how long they'd planned this, how much money they bet, all the mean things they said about me in their group chat. Amy tried reaching out through mutual friends, saying she'd learned her lesson. But every time someone showed me her messages, they'd end up seeing the screenshots too. Pretty soon she ran out of people willing to speak up for her. It's been 6 months since the wedding that never was, and Amy never really bounced back. She kept trying to claw her way back into my life, sending messages about how she could fix everything if I just gave her another chance, like chances were some unlimited resource she hadn't already burned through with every one of her stupid pranks. But I was done. Her bridesmaids, the same ones who laughed along with her, didn't stick around either. Sarah, the ex-maid of honor, even sent this long-winded apology about how she should have warned me, and felt awful about what happened. Too little, too late. Turns out when the joke's over and the audience leaves, the one who played the fool is the only one left standing in the mess. Tom? He blocked Amy on everything and started telling people he was manipulated into the whole thing. Last I heard, he moved back to his hometown and works at his dad's store now. Guess the simple life wasn't so bad after all. Amy's parents are still apologizing every time they run into my family. Her mom sent me a Christmas card saying she thinks about that day all the time and wishes she'd seen the signs earlier. Her dad actually helped me sell the house Amy and I were going to move into. But here's the weird part. Something good actually came out of this whole mess. Jen and I started getting coffee sometimes, just talking, Turns out Jen had liked me for a while but obviously never said anything because I was with Amy. We started hanging out more. Nothing serious at first, just lunch breaks at work, maybe grabbing dinner sometimes. She's different from Amy in every way possible. Quiet, kind, thinks about other people's feelings, never tries to make jokes at someone else's expense. 3 months after the wedding that wasn't, we started dating officially. My parents love her. Even my sister, who hated Amy from day one, thinks Jen's perfect for me. Amy found out about us through mutual friends and tried starting drama online, saying Jen stole me from her and that she planned this to happen. Nobody believed her. The screenshots of her planning to humiliate me with her ex kind of killed any sympathy people might have had. Speaking of Amy, she's still trying to fix her reputation. She made this long public apology on Facebook about how she's grown and learned from her mistakes. Then 2 days later, she was in my company's parking lot trying to confront Jen. Security had to escort her out. My life's actually better now. Got promoted at work, a real one this time, not the one Amy made fun of. Moved into a new apartment in a better part of town. Jen and I are taking things slow. We went on vacation last month, just a small beach trip, nothing fancy, but it was nice being with someone who didn't feel the need to post every second of it on social media or turn everything into a joke. And oh, I still have the prenup folder. Mike, my lawyer friend, framed it and gave it to me as a birthday present. It's hanging in my home office now. Jen thinks it's hilarious. My friends say I dodged a bullet. I think I dodged a whole firing squad. Sometimes I look at old pictures of me and Amy and can't believe I didn't see what was coming. But you know what they say, when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, red flags just look like flags. The weirdest part? I'm actually grateful it happened. If Amy hadn't shown her true colors that day, I might have married her. Might have spent years dealing with her pranks and jokes and never known she was meeting up with Tom behind my back. And instead, I'm with someone who respects me. Someone who thinks love isn't about pranks or social media likes or humiliating your partner for laughs. So yeah, that's where everyone ended up. Amy's still single and living with her parents. Tom's back in his hometown, the bridesmaids scattered to different states. And me? I'm actually happy. Turns out sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best things happening.